Today on the official Marvel podcast, we sit down with Creative Director Frédéric Gémus to learn more about the retro-inspired beat-em-up video game Marvel Cosmic Invasion.
I believe tribute games feature some of the best artists and animators in the pixel art genre. And honestly, they really outdid themselves this time around.
We're also diving into the new X-Men comic book crossover event, Age of Revelation, with the writer leading the charge, Jed MacKay.
We're looking at a world X years into the future, a world where, at first glance, the mutants have won. However, this Eden is not without rot at its roots.
And we explore the tradition of alternate future timelines in X-Men lore with Marvel Comics editor Darren Shan.
Front and center on the cover, Wolverine had one hand? What? That's crazy.
I'm Evan Narcissus.
I'm Raylo.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
Evan, I feel a little wintry breeze coming through because the holiday season is somehow already nearly upon us. And Marvel Cosmic Invasion is sure to be at the top of every Marvel and gamers wish list. Hint, hint to everyone listening that knows me.
Wait a second, Ray. I thought we weren't doing gifts between hosts this year.
Okay, well, usually I give everyone a gift, Evan, but if you don't have one for me, I get that already. And also, I know that my family also listens to this podcast. So, hey, Mom.
All right, Mama Lo, you know what you need to do. And Ray, I hope you do get it, because that way we'll be able to play together, controlling galactic heroes like Nova, Rocket Raccoon, and the Silver Surfer, who are teaming up with Captain America, Spider-Man, She-Hulk, and more in this all-new side-scrolling adventure. Ray, I know you caught up with the game's creative director, Frédéric Gémus, recently, so let's take a listen to your conversation.
Let's just start at the basics. Why don't you go ahead and give our listeners kind of an overview of Marvel Cosmic Invasion? Let us know what kind of game it is and what our players can expect from the experience.
So Marvel Cosmic Invasion is an arcade beat-em-up game with a strong focus on action and multiplayer. And it's all packaged in high-poppin' pixelated art style that clearly reminds us of the games we played back in the days, right after watching our Saturday morning cartoons, or just, in the arcades. It's a game where 15 of your favorite Marvel superheroes will fight against the hordes of Annihilus as they travel from Earth to the negative zones to basically put an end to this cosmic invasion.
Yeah. So let's talk about the idea of the beat 'em up game, because we have so many retro things coming back into the Marvel universe. What, I guess, was it like, or how did you guys get to the point of creating this kind of game style for right now?
So we are big fans of the beat 'em up genre and the old school video games, but we also know that when you go back and replay them, sometimes they're a bit, rough around the edges or not exactly like your memories. So we really love the idea of trying to keep the same language that comes with these older titles, but also bring them with a more modern touch where we can, polish those rough edges to come up with a way more modern experience that we would get back in the days. Like, we love to say that we try to make games that play the way you remember them, but not exactly how they were.
Yeah, a little bit easier. Your joystick doesn't get stuck anymore. Well, this game features a roster of 15 different characters across the entire Marvel universe. I guess, can you share how you chose these specific characters and highlight maybe a few fan favorites?
Yeah, so, choosing which character would be featured in Marvel Cosmic Invasion was probably the first big challenge we had in the development. 15 character is both already a quite large roster for a game like this, because you have to understand that pixel art games are basically almost like classic animations. You have to draw and create all of these characters by hand, and it's in pixel art, which is a bit more complicated. Even though it is quite a large number, it felt not big enough to feature all of the characters we love and that everyone loves, basically. So we had to sit down and start looking at which character were not only fan favorites, but also characters that would literally surprise fans and would also feature abilities and ways to express themselves that were going to be interesting for an action beat 'em up game, and provide a fresh and interesting gameplay opportunities.
I love that. Do you have a personal favorite to play as already?
Oh, it's like asking me to pick my favorite child.
Fair point.
Yeah, so one of my personal favorite character to play is definitively a cosmic Ghost Rider. Like Punisher meeting Ghost Rider is quite simply the craziest beat 'em up character you can imagine. Like he can not only use his chains to fight enemies that are surrounding him with large swipes of flames, but he also comes equipped with the cosmic machine guns, which can also deal damage to enemies that are far away from him. He can also use his cosmic bracer to literally create a blast below him that will just send him flying off in the air to attack enemies above, or summon his motorcycle to do a special attack that will knock down multiple enemies in the field at the same time.
Okay, you're already giving us our special combos. I need to start writing down everything that I can do.
I think fans will also love Nova, not only because Richard Rider will feature his magnificent 90s era mullet haircut, but also because he's the most well-rounded character we have. Like he can fly, he's very fast. He can also use a Nova Force to blast energy beams that will travel the whole arena, or just simply burst in explosion that can hit multiple enemies nearby. Like it's really hard to just pick one favorite for sure.
The art style of this game is so cool. I think that's what had us all hooked from the beginning. I mean, it is so striking. It is so decisive in how it looks. So how did you come up with this cohesive visual style? I mean, it's its own character in its own way, too.
Yeah, I think bringing the Marvel Universe to life in our pixel art style was quite interesting to do. Like, I believe tribute games feature some of the best artists and animators in the pixel art genre, and honestly they really outdid themselves this time around. It's always a challenge for sure to adapt the Marvel universe because these are very popular characters and locations that had many different interpretations before, yet they always felt coherent, and there's also this whole legacy behind that you need to kind of stay true to, and this legacy will create high expectation from the players. But we also wanted to focus on creating our own version of this world. And I think our art director, Adam, and our team of artists did an outstanding job at that. And yeah, I think this is also why our retro-inspired pixel art style looks so stunning and oozes with personality, as it's not only infused with nostalgia, but also the real talents of our artists behind.
One really, really exciting aspect of this game is for anyone who may be like me, if you love sitting on the couch with a friend or even your partner and loves playing that couch co-op game, it feels like not many of those co-op games are being made anymore, but Marvel Cosmic Invasion, it completely embraces that format. So I guess how does that game also modernize the mechanic for today's players? Because in a way, it does make it feel like you're 2-on-2 in an arcade, right?
Absolutely. The complete game has been built from the ground up to be played either solo, but mostly with friends. So with up to 4 players, either on the same couch or online via the internet. Players can drop in at any time by just picking up a controller, and the gameplay itself will adapt. So that means that we're going to bring in more enemies to make sure that everyone is busy
yes.
in the battle. But if you need to drop out, the gameplay would also scale back to adapt the challenge to the correct amount of players.
There's also another standout feature you guys have, the Cosmic Swap tag team system.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through how that works and what that also adds to the gameplay experience?
When we settled on the 15 playable characters, we became a bit worried that, maybe players would get overwhelmed at the selection of their favorite heroes, or they might feel like they would pick the wrong character, since all of our superheroes are unique, even though the whole game has been built so that there is no wrong selection possible. The gameplay is adapted for all different playstyles. So yeah, combining the powers of 2 superheroes quickly came to mind as a way to provide players with different tools, like combining flying characters with a non-flying one, easy match, or basically a way to explore the game mechanics even deeper by figuring out character combinations that can provide crazy combo potential and such. Plus, for us, it also felt like it was also a kind of a throwback to the eras of the Marvel team-up comics as well. So we thought it was fun. But yeah, to keep things simple and accessible, players can quickly swap between their 2 selected characters at the press of a single button. So As the superhero swap positions, the new character that has been summoned will come in performing an action that will always matches what's happening on screen. So that means if I'm in the middle of fighting an enemy, the summoned hero will come in attacking as well, and we'll keep the attacks going for a combo. Like, we really wanted to keep things simple and just fun to use. So if you just perform a really cool move in the game and you send an enemy flying, like, we strongly encourage you to always tap the swap button just to keep the action going, or just, simply see what happened. Like, whenever we do demos for the game, we see all of these crazy combinations happening, and it's always quite impressive.
Are there any surprises that long-term Marvel fans should keep an eye out for?
So the short answer is yes. But if we go with the longer answer, like, I would say that there are definitely surprises for both, longtime Marvel fans, but also newcomers that are more new to the universe, that they will enjoy. It is quite a collection of cameos and Easter eggs of all sizes, I would say.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again. It was a blast, and I can't wait to get my hands on this game. Marvel Cosmic Invasion arrives on all platforms December 1st.
If you're not 100% current on your Marvel Comics reading lately, you might be a little surprised to learn that some of your favorite Avengers, or should I say X-Vengers, look a little different. Hawkeye has 6 arms, Shang-Chi is looking a little rocky, and the Black Widow, well, she's made up entirely of water now.
Or maybe you're like me and too involved in the characters' lives and wondering what's going on between Iron Man and Emma Frost. I mean, didn't they get divorced?
I'm pretty sure they did, but this stuff we're talking about isn't your typical Marvel universe. Recently, Earth 616 has been transformed into the world of Revelation after being exposed to the X virus, a pathogen developed and unleashed by the villainous organization known as 3K.
Welcome to X-Men Age of Revelation. This story kicks off with X-Men Age of Revelation Overture issue number 1 and spreads across the rest of the Marvel Universe through tie-in series like Amazing X-Men, X-Vengers, Iron and Frost, and so many more. Age of Revelation architect Jed MacKay joined you, Evan, to help us break it all down. So let's check it out.
So, Jed, a lot of stuff has been going on in the X-Men's corner of the Marvel Universe. Set the stage for listeners who may not be up to speed. What exactly is X-Men Age of Revelation?
So Age of Revelation is the X-Men crossover event that we're just started in. We're looking at a world X years into the future, a world where at first glance the mutants have won. They've got what they want. They have their own territory, their own homeland, their own independence. However, as we see this through the eyes of Cyclops and Beast from our present day, whose consciousnesses have been sent forward into their older bodies in the future. This Eden is now without Rod at its roots, and they're going to act as our viewpoints to explore this world and to try and set things right from the enormous lie and crime that this world is built upon.
Let's talk about the revelation of it all.
Sure.
Revelation obviously refers to Doug Ramsey's new identity. Can you talk about Doug Ramsey, his past, and where we find him now, and why he became Revelation?
Yeah, so Doug was one of the New Mutants. He was, unlike a lot of mutant characters, he had a set of powers that was not, super well suited to being a superhero. Couldn't leap tall buildings, could shoot lasers out of his fingers. Instead, he could understand languages, which put him in some difficulties as time went on. He died for a period of time and came back. Later on during the Krakoan Age, he was the voice of Krakoa. He was the main advocate for the living island itself, being able to understand its speech and to speak for it. At the end of that period, Doug was part of a competition put on by Apocalypse, who was looking for an heir. He was going to retire back to Mars and wanted to leave someone to carry on his work on Earth. That person was Doug Ramsey, who was then transformed. His powers were amplified to the point where not only can he understand language, but when he speaks directly to the language centers of the brain, essentially making him a administrator level user to people's brains. What he says must be obeyed. In which again ties into his background with computers and programming, that sort of thing. So in the present, we see Doug with a new mission, kind of a new set of powers and a new and uncertain future. We are making that future somewhat more certain here in Age of Revelation, where we see him, in his Imperial phase, when apparently his scheme has succeeded and he's gotten what he's wanted. But we'll see how that shakes out.
Who else is going to be showing up? Who are the other major players in this event?
In my group, the Amazing X-Men, they are mutants who are against Revelation's rule of this time period based on the lie that he based this entire society on, which consists of Cyclops and Beast, both of them in their older bodies, but their minds are those of the present and then cast forward in the future as part of a scheme by the X-Men. We see Glob Herman, who has a much harder edge these days and has been significantly radicalized. We have Jen Starkey, aka Animalia, who was one of the new mutants we picked up in the earlier issues of our run of X-Men. She's kind of come into her own powers, is significantly more capable now. Similarly, we have Schwarzschild, 3K's X-Men in the present, but as part of the Amazing X-Men in the future, the kind of like gravity-controlling adult activated mutant. And, we saw several of the X-Men fall in that first issue of Overture, unfortunately, but that's what happens when Revelation sends his top guy out, that being the Angel of Death, the mutant formerly known as Wolverine.
Nice. So you're also working with Ryan Stegman and Netho Diaz on these books. Can you talk about what it's been like to collaborate with each of them? What are Ryan and Netho changing up in their styles or visual approaches to kind of make the Age of Revelation books feel different than the standard mainline X-Men books?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, we're given this sort of post-apocalyptic / utopian Edenic sort of world where, the Revelation territories are overgrown with plant life and the sort of reminiscent of the Capone era. Given that, the land itself is made a mutant land. It's something that's inimical to human life, to human survival. So right away, the visual signifiers are totally different from, especially in X-Men, which a lot of it happens in Alaska during the winter. So, you're contrasting, leaves and foliage with, snow and like the factory being such a industrial kind of infrastructural sort of environment. We're also seeing these kind of new looks for characters. For instance, in Book of Revelation, we're seeing Nathan do some subtler work than we have been doing in X-Men, because Book of Revelation is there's a lot of politicking there. There's a lot of kind of back and forth between characters who are jockeying for power as it takes place among Revelation's inner circle, who are, trying to get power for themselves. And this really interesting challenge for Nathan, because Nathan he's a big action guy. He's incredible at it. And to see him flex a different set of muscles, I think it's really extraordinary. He's doing such a fantastic job. Similarly, Ryan is in his element, where Overture and Finale are just like big action stories. They're fast paced, they're exciting. There's people jumping around, and it's just very. He gives it the physicality. It really roots it. Things have weight, and power, and strength behind it, and it's just it's classic Stegman. It's what he's good at. And, you love to see him do what he's good at. And then Mahmoud on Amazing.
I've always loved the way Mahmoud does like body language and facial expressions.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of that in this book, because there's a lot of kind of unfinished business among the characters in this book. Scott and Hank never asked to be brought forward 10 years in the future with no foreseeable way home. So there's a lot of kind of business or emotion or acting that's done bodily as opposed to just dialogue, and Mahmoud's so good with that.
That's awesome. So you talked about like the terraforming of mutant land and some of the other kind of like infrastructural changes that are going to be happening in this alternate timeline. What role does the X virus play in it? Can you talk about the origins of it and the effect that it has on the storyline?
Yeah, so the X virus is kind of foundational to the entire time frame, given that the X virus's appearance in Philadelphia is largely the inciting event as far as the world at large is concerned. The X virus is what went out there. It transformed humans into mutants. Those that did not transform mostly died. And it also transformed the land. So for humans now, the water is undrinkable, the air is unbreathable, the food is inedible, to the point where humans who hang out in the Revelation territories too long we'll sink and die. This is not their land anymore. This is not their world anymore. So the X virus was blamed on 3K, the gene terrorist organization, currently the antagonist in X-Men. However, that may not be the case, as we've seen in Age of Revelation Overture. So we're going to kind of explore the origins of that, where it came from, how it happened. Because again, it's one of those things that's kind of like largely in the background throughout the series, but it is always there. Like it's an environmental concern. It's a constant environmental pressure. The X virus is a great concern because it will either kill or change you, and change would be preferable, but it can be tough depending on what happens.
Okay, so for readers who want to follow the main storyline in Age of Revelation, which books are essential?
So the essential books are Zero into Overture. Overture splits out into Amazing X-Men and X-Men Book of Revelation 1, 2, and 3. They meet together back in Finale.
Nice.
So you're gonna want your Overture and Finale, and then Amazing X-Men and Book of Revelation between those.
The X-Men's relationship with Apocalypse's character is multifaceted, right? He was an antagonist for a while. He was, challenging the X-Men and mutants all across the world to better themselves, harden themselves for a future that he hoped for, where they would kind of become ascendant. But now, with Doug Ramsey as his heir, as Revelation, how does that relationship change, right? He was a former teammate. He was the voice of Krakoa. He's had a different history with the X-Men and mutants in the comics. So how does that relationship change now that he's the heir apparent to the mantle of Apocalypse?
Well, that's kind of something that the X-Men and Doug in the present are in the process of exploring. Because as we saw in Age of Revelation 0, Zorn marks the beginning of the Age of Revelation with Doug Ramsey joins the X-Men. And in X-Men 22, we see that happen. Because the X-Men are justifiably cautious, given their history with Apocalypse. Cyclops says, am I talking to Doug Ramsey now, or am I talking to the heir of Apocalypse? And he points out, yeah, I'm the heir of Apocalypse, but you're the heir of Charles Xavier, and of those two, I know which one I think is scarier.
Shots fired.
I didn't say it quite that way in the book, but I kind of wish I did.
Yeah.
But it was something along those lines. And I think that's valid because, that's the whole point of this entire stage of X-Men, this is from the Ashes era, is to explore what these characters do when these traditional, leaders and mentors are not there. Charles has gone off to space. Apocalypse is off in Araco. These characters have inherited the world, and we're going to see what they make of that inheritance.
That's dope. Well, Jed, this has been great. I'm really looking forward to the storyline. I know our listeners probably are too. Anybody interested can pick up all the Age of Revelation books as they come out. The X-Men aren't exactly strangers to timeline shenanigans. Throughout their publishing history, they've traveled to some pretty strange alternate timelines. From post-apocalyptic wastelands to mysterious too-good-to-be-true utopias, the X-Men have truly seen it all.
Joining the show to explore some of those stories is Marvel Comics editor Darren Shan as he sits down with you, Evan.
All right, everybody, let's dive right in. Darren, why don't you tell our listeners who you are and what you do over in the House of Ideas?
Hey, everybody. My name's Darren. I am an editor in the X-Men office, and I am the editor on a few of the upcoming Age of Revelation titles.
Where we get to peek into an alternate reality, which is a device that X-Men comics have used very robustly in the past. And our conversation today is just going to be talking about the other times we've been able to see alternate futures in X-Men comics, what they've shown us, what's stuck, what's changed. So let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
The first storyline that we're going to talk about has been made reference to and paid homage to not only in X-Men comics, but comics all over the world. We're talking, of course, about Days of Future Past, which ran only 2 issues. It ran in Uncanny X-Men number 141 and 142. The writer was Chris Claremont. Artist was John Byrne. It takes place in a dystopian and alternate 13, where mutants are hunted, incarcerated in internment camps, and exterminated by Sentinels. The surviving members of the X-Men fight back by sending Kitty Pryde's mind back in time to prevent an assassination that triggers anti-mutant hysteria. Darren, what were your memories of first encountering the storyline?
It's funny because Days of Future Past is, it's kind of like, how people talk about the Godfather movies a lot. You see a lot of the influences in like other media, lots of homages to like certain scenes in The Godfather, right? And you don't realize that it was an homage until you actually saw the movie. So for me, that was a lot like what Days of Future Past was. I saw it in so many different variations. I would see sequels in comics. I would see it adapted into the X-Men animated series. That was actually my first exposure to that storyline. So it's funny that it was really what you were saying before. It was only 2 issues. So when I finally did read it, I was like, it's that short?
Yeah, the impact of the story is definitely like disproportionate to the amount of pages it occurred in. What was the thing that happened in Days of Future Past that shocked you the most?
I think one of the things that stood out to me was seeing Magneto as part of their team. He was in a wheelchair. He was like pretty much like their new Professor X in this future. And this was like way before Magneto reformed and joined the school and everything. So this was like your first time seeing the X-Men and Magneto on the same side. So it kind of told you like this is how bad things are, that they have to team up with one of their worst enemies.
Yeah. Next up, we have The Age of Apocalypse. This storyline debuted in X-Men Alpha #1 in 1995, written by Scott Lobdell, Mark Waid, art by Roger Cruz and Steve Epting. But for those who haven't read the storyline, Legion, who's David Haller, a son of Charles Xavier, travels back in time to kill Magneto, but he accidentally kills his own father. This leads to a ripple effect that transforms the timeline. With Xavier dead and out of the picture, Apocalypse attacks and takes over the world, transforming it in his image. This probably was a sweet spot for a lot of our current generation of fans. How did you first encounter it?
This is like my bread and butter. You're right. This is the sweet spot for people like me. When I was a kid, seeing that Alpha issue on stands, and it was a chromium cover, which I think comic publishers just started doing. It was eye-catching for a lot of reasons. It was shiny. It had amazing Joe Madureira art on it. Front and center on the cover, Wolverine had one hand. What? That's crazy. So it was definitely a thing where it was like, I want to see where this goes. I want to go there.
What were the plot turns here that shocked you the most?
So I think for me, the biggest twist was just seeing Wolverine with one hand, but he's also with Jean Grey and Cyclops being a bad guy or supposed bad guy. That was the best part for me.
We also have characters who made their debut in this event, like Nate Gray, aka X-Man, Blink, and Sugarman. These are all characters who survived the closure of the Age of Apocalypse, and they migrated to the mainline Earth 616 reality.
Yeah, and some of those characters left such an impression that they have actually outgrown their origins from Age of Apocalypse. When I look at Nate Gray, he's had so many adventures in the 616 that I don't really, it's not that I forget that he was from the AOA, but that's just one small part of him now. And same thing with Blink. I actually think of Blink more as an Exiles character than I do an AOA character. And I would also say that I think also helped solidify AOA's place in X-Men continuity, because it wasn't just a throwaway story. There were ramifications that came from that story that went back into the main X-Men books after everything returned back to normal.
Yeah, and that is a perfect segue for our next event, House of M, an alternate reality event that debuted in 2005. In House of M #1, it was a miniseries that went 8 issues, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Olivier Coipel. Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, alters reality to create a world where mutants rule and humans are the oppressed minority. Haha, switcheroo. She seemingly grants everyone's deepest wishes, but when Wolverine and company try to shatter the illusion, Wanda snaps out of it and depowers nearly all mutants with the now infamous words, "No more mutants." Man, I just remember like it felt like such a shocking reversal of the usual status quo in X-Men books. What about you, Darren?
I don't think I realized how big of an impact it was going to have until like the last 2 or 3 issues. And I just thought it was going to be like a side miniseries. But when Wanda does the whole "no more mutants" thing, I was just like, wait, what? And then the 8th issue where they're discovering the aftermath of that spell, I was like, wait, hold on, really?
Yeah.
Like, damn, like that's okay. That's crazy.
You know, it's been 20 years, but I remember the number of mutants that were left after she said no more mutants. I think it was 198.
Yeah.
And that's a big number, but it's like a fraction of people who were like empowered mutants in the Marvel Universe before this, right? So in terms of lasting effects of House of M, what's like top of mind for you, Darren?
Off the top of my head, it was Messiah Complex.
Right. The mutant crossover storyline from a couple of years later.
You know, they're now an endangered species, and the first mutant birth since House of M occurs. And it turns out that this new mutant might be the Messiah that mutant kind needs to repopulate, to save their species. So many stories came out of that as well, including a version of X-Force that I think has lasted pretty well into present day, with them as a Black Ops hit squad, you know?
Yeah. All right, so we moved from House of M to Old Man Logan, which happened in 2008. It ran in the main Wolverine title, Wolverine 66 to 72. There was also Wolverine Old Man Logan Giant Size #1. The primary writer was Mark Miller, and the artist was Steve McNiven. And the background of the story is it happens in an alternate reality, a dystopian universe where the supervillains finally won. Superheroes are basically extinct, outlawed, and Logan is one of the few who are remaining. Man, I just remember this storyline being incredibly mean and nasty in tone. What about you, Darren?
Yeah, I would say that this story is so different from the ones we talked about before, because in those previous ones, Days of Future Past, Age of Apocalypse, and House of M, the heroes had to undo that future or that alternate reality. And they did. The stories would always end with they undid it somehow, or they prevented that future from happening. This is just like, it's happened and it's continuing to happen. And so it is definitely the darker of the 4 stories that we've talked about so far.
Yeah, and you know, for a while, like some of these other alternate reality characters, Old Man Logan does jump into the 616 and, you know, runs around with the younger versions of the people he remembers. So I like that he stuck around in this way because it really is a cautionary tale on 2 levels. One, for like Logan himself. And the other thing is like things get so bad in this future version of the United States that we see that like you wonder how it's even sustainable. Okay, folks, the last alternate reality X-Men event that we're going to talk about in this segment is Sins of Sinister. It starts with Sins of Sinister #1, which came out in 2023. Sins of Sinister #1 was written by Kieran Gillen with art by a whole truckload of amazing artists, including David Lopez, Travel Foreman, really just a list of all-stars here. This storyline is centered around Mr. Sinister, the iconic X-Men, sometimes villain, sometimes ally, sometimes teammate. In this storyline, he manipulates mutant genetics to create powerful chimeras based on the X-Men, like Rasputin 4, who was a mashup of Colossus, Kate Pryde, Kid Omega, Eunice the Untouchable, that's a deep cut, and Laura Kinney's Wolverine. This storyline takes place over 3 time periods, 10 years in the future, 100 years in the future, and 1,000 years in the future. The one character who manages to stick around from this event is Rasputin 4, who survives his alternate universe and has since migrated to the 616 universe. Darren, what is it about Sinister and this mode of Sinister that you feel like is so great to premise an entire event around?
Well, I think it was really Kieran's version of Sinister, where he was a lot more, outgoing, maybe even a little flamboyant as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think anyone had done too much of with Sinister in the past. So if anything, I think having worked with Kieran in the past, I could see him having so much fun writing this character in his other X books that when he got the opportunity to do an event centered around this character, I could just see him having so much fun with it.
Yeah, it's really a big difference from how Mr. Sinister was portrayed in his first couple of appearances. You remember, he was always like the guy in silhouette, the secret manipulator in the shadows. And when this kind of shift happened with his portrayals, it was like, no, he's scheming out in the open and he's daring you to stop him. And he's moving too fast across too many different vectors for really you to even have a chance. And this event kind of shows what happens if he like really hits you with both barrels. Things change so dramatically. And the idea of the chimeras is like such a potent one because it's the kind of thing you do when you're a fan and you're like, what if this character also had this character's powers? They'd be really unstoppable. So like, it's such a foundation for really bold reimaginations that I think it's a lot of fun when you read it all. Well, Darren, thank you so much for your time going down memory lane, alternate reality memory lane, as it were, with us here on the Official Marvel Podcast. You can read all of these future X-Men timeline stories on Marvel Unlimited in a dedicated reading list. Auto renewal and other terms apply. Marvel Unlimited is open to U.S. residents ages 18 and up. See marvel.com/unlimited for details.
In 2025's X-Men issue number 17, written by Jed MacKay, the team is ambushed by the evil organization 3K and their own fraudulent team of X-Men. Their mission? To defeat the real X-Men and replace them. Led by Schwarzschild, a human-turned-mutant with gravity-altering powers, the 3K X-Men proved to be a serious threat to Cyclops and his squad. But when Schwarzschild begins taunting Cyclops, mocking his optic beams as weak compared to his own abilities, the tide begins to turn. Cyclops outmaneuvers Schwarzschild by blasting the ground in front of him, effectively creating a distraction. This gives Cyclops' unstoppable teammate, Juggernaut, the perfect opening for a direct hit. With Schwarzschild defeated, his team of imposter X-Men quickly fall apart without their leader, securing the victory for the real X-Men. That's when Cyclops approaches the fallen Schwarzschild and finally responds to the taunts he dished out earlier, sharing his strategy for victory. That's a common misconception, that the most powerful among us are the leaders. I get where it comes from, I do, but my mutant power has never been the reason that I'm dangerous. It's because I can set up a battlefield like a pool table with everything in just the right place so that when you sink the first ball, the rest follow.
We're off next week, but we'll be back on November 19th with the creative team behind the new Infernal Hulk comic book series. Philip Kennedy Johnson, and Nick Klein.
This is not a reboot or relaunch. This is always meant to be like the next chapter. And this is the big change that we've been looking forward to for a long time.
That's all for today, though. This episode was hosted by Evan Narcissus and me, Ray Lowe.
The Official Marvel Podcast is produced by Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores.
Brad Barton is the Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development. Emily Godfrey is the Production Manager.
This episode was mixed by Zachary Goldberg.
Our theme music is by Ida Akbal.
Larissa Rosen is the executive producer. And now, the Marvel Unlimited legal disclaimer.
Auto renewal and other terms and conditions apply. Marvel Unlimited is open to U.S. residents ages 18 and up, void where prohibited. Marvel will automatically renew your subscription by charging your payment method on file at the renewal rate, then in effect unless and until you cancel. Subscribers can cancel their subscription at any time by accessing my account or reaching out to Marvel customer support at help.marvel.com. All subscription fees are non-refundable. No refunds or credits for partial months or years. Marvel user account and internet connection required. See marvel.com/unlimited for details.
All right, everybody, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening.